Okay, so diving right in, we were talking about the ones that, lead types that are on the more, generally the more aware side, the more direct side. And now we're going to start talking about things that are going to work when you are looking at audience that are less aware. Somebody asked me during the break, what is it that they're aware of? And I did run through that Gene Schwartz list of those things that people are more aware of or less aware of for two reasons. One, because Todd had actually covered some of that during his presentation yesterday. The other is because breakthrough advertising has a really good, it goes in depth in that, and I didn't want us to go through methodically through it here, especially for people who have already read it. But if you haven't read that, you should read it, because he does a much more engaging conversation about awareness, about desire, about the momentum of mass desire, all fascinating stuff. One of the things, though, about this side that I had said earlier, that this is the tougher side. This is the part where you start seeing copywriters prove their skills. And I'm going to dig in here for. Let me see. I have some things for my throat here, just so I can keep talking. This is where this is the tough area for copywriters, because to be indirect, you've got to sustain that interest in the lead for a little bit longer before you can talk about a product or anything else. So customers are fickle, you know, they don't want to be sold right away, so they're resistant to something where it's obvious that they're being sold, yet at the same time, they want to know exactly what you're up to. So here you are trying to hold off on revealing that you're going to do a sale, and you have to hint at the fact that you're going to do a sale. So how do you do that? It's tough. But these are some of the ways that people can get into it, where you keep people engaged. So secrets and systems, we'll talk about those first. Has everybody ever seen this ad? This is an old classic. So this was a boardroom promotion. I think it was boardroom. What never ever to eat on an airplane. And then this was it's maybe a little confusing for you guys, because it's also a thing where you're talking about trying out the book free. It's a soft offer for this book, so we actually know that there's a sale up front. But what is really compelling, what is the thing that's really compelling this sale? It's the curiosity, right? Curiosity about what not to eat on an airplane. Guess what never gets revealed in the ad? What never ever to eat on the airplane? I've probably read this ad 20 times. I fly thousands and thousands of miles every year. I will be flying tomorrow. I flew yesterday 9 hours. I had 2 airplanes, another 2 airplanes. I still have no idea what I'm not supposed to eat on an airplane. However, I think about it every time they put that tray down. I wonder if the thing I'm not supposed to eat is here. So far, I haven't found it. But okay, so the secret there, the power of secrets. When people have a secret, if somebody says to you, this is something that you'll notice on this side of the scale. You know, if I say, I have a promise to give you, people want to know what the promise is before they assign a value to it. If I say I have a problem to solve, I'm going to solve a problem for you. They're going to say, what problem? And is it relevant to me? On this side, you're not so sure who those people are. They're less aware of you. You're a little bit less aware of them. So you're trying to offer them something that you feel is going to engage people just because of the nature of the way human beings are. So on this side, people tend to like secrets. Say, I have a secret. You don't even know what that secret is. But now you're a little bit more curious. You're piqued in a way where you feel like, I might like that because I like secrets. Okay? So how Obama made $9.2 million with executive dividends, the secret part there, that's something we saw earlier on. The secret part is what? Executive dividends. We don't know what those are. And we certainly don't know how they're worth $9.2 billion. And depending on how you feel about Obama, that might make you feel one way or another, but your curiosity will be piqued. Okay, so the value of that is something, and guess what never gets revealed? What executive dividends are, until you pay. 7 dirty little secrets some multivitamin makers hope you never find out. Millions of people, maybe even you, take a multivitamin each day, but as it turns out, your multivitamin could be one thing, the one thing standing between you and vibrant, renewed health. What? The vitamin I'm taking could actually make me sick? Okay. So 7 dirty little secrets. Here's somebody with a secret, not a secret about something good, but a secret about something bad. Okay, what's the pull here? A secret. So, unlock Wall Street's secret logic. Somebody who's an investor is like, okay, I feel like the people on Wall Street have a system, have something that they're doing that I'm not doing that makes them do better. Now, this is a very old promo. A little bit dated, I think, probably. And I wrote it, but I wrote a long time ago. But what do people do? What do people do now I thought maybe I had another example. When is there anybody here who subscribes to a financial newsletter? So when you get an upsell to some kind of system, a trading system, how often do you notice that those trading systems are almost always some kind of secret shortcut, some kind of way to get to the result you want to get that is going to be easier, faster, an insider's knowledge, something else, some angle to something that you've been kept out of before. Very, very common in the information publishing, financial publishing, is secrets and systems. This doesn't have to be only there, of course. You are offering people a way to do things that get them there faster, shortcuts, make things that work, and that can work in any different field. People want to know how to do something, a hack. This is like is on the huge thing on the internet, like lifehacker.com and everything. Hacks to do this, hacks to do that. Hacks are just secrets. Yes? Okay, so when you see, okay, very common in the financial field. So he's saying, yeah, 10 million, 10 becomes 10 million in a month or something like that. Okay. So when you see something like that, he's asking how, just to repeat that for everybody, how it affects refunds and general credibility using those kinds of things. And my answer would be, often it affects them badly. Because, well, I think it can affect it badly up front because people are going to read that, and if it's too ridiculous, they're going to be like, this is a scam. This guy is a huckster, is trying to sell me something. It can affect them badly on the back end. Sometimes it can work. Sometimes those work really well. Sometimes people justify them and put them through. And the truth from behind the scenes is that, particularly for Agora, our legal department is extremely strict. So if you can't show it mathematically, it can't be impossible or you can't use it. They'll let improbable go if the wording is hedging enough to allow that it's improbable. And then you have to have a line that will say, now, of course, this isn't going to happen in every scenario or even most scenarios, but what if you did it a little bit less and you hedge it back? But there's controversy when we talk about that, using those kind of promotions, because often what happens is somebody comes in on that kind of promise, and it's so hardcore, so over the top that when we can't fulfill on that, they feel gypped. They feel like hope unfulfilled. So it can burn. It can burn an audience. So you don't want to do, you really, as a business, you don't want to do that over and over again because you'll burn your customers, especially if you have a business where you need to keep a relationship with those customers, which most businesses now are ongoing relationship-based businesses. So that doesn't, I don't know if that quite ties into the secrets and systems, maybe into the trading systems, because that often happens. Have I written promotions like that? I think that if I thought back on it, I probably have, but I can't think of any in particular. I try to avoid them personally because I don't feel like they build the right relationship with a customer. And I feel the same way. This might be getting too much into inside baseball, just the financial publishing stuff. I feel the same way about stock picking promos, where you're going to send something out to 100,000 people focusing on a stock that costs $1. You are going to burn that market when that stock goes up and then it crashes. And you'll be like, awesome, I sold $2 million worth of subscriptions this weekend. Well, guess how much you're giving back next weekend? Probably about 1,950,000 of it when the thing crashes. And it's not just that. All those people are now like, man, you lied to me. And you think about the personal relationship thing, like you just cheated on me, or you pretended you pretended you had a mansion and a Rolls Royce, and I found out you're the butler, and your boss is on vacation, like some sitcom. All right, I'm going way off here, but yeah, but you basically, in general, you honor that relationship the way you would honor a personal relationship. You don't want to screw the people over, or you'll pay for it. Okay, so secrets and systems, good for trading services, invented term pitches. An invented term pitch is like when you reinvent the terminology around something. Why would you reinvent the terminology? It's interesting that we're talking about deception. So why would you talk about Plan B retirement checks or something else, gas pump revenge or something like that, where you're trying to say something differently? I'm sorry? You don't want to sell a commodity. Not quite. What you want to do. Exactly. You don't want them to dismiss the idea. You don't want them to immediately categorize them as something they have heard before. So you're trying to reinvent the term so that you get them in enough that you can talk to them and you can reveal what it is that you're talking about, or you might not reveal what it is you're talking about. But what you're trying to do is bring them in and get them to hear you without any kind of bias. Because we bring a bias. Well, there's a term. What you see is me trying to edit in my head, not to go off on a tangent, but I can't help it. I'm going to do it anyway. There's a term that one of my mentors, Bill Bonner, uses, the categorical imperative. He's using it wrong, and I've told him this for years and years. That is not what the categorical imperative means. It means something about moral authority and everything, and Immanuel Kant and all this other stuff. But it seems like that's what it should mean, so it still works. The categorical imperative, as he describes it, is people want to put things in categories. And you want to try to, that's why we do the pattern interrupt, that's why we do differentiation. We want them to feel like it's not what they think it is, it's something else. So you need to get them to do that so they'll listen to you. Okay. These other things you can see when I pass along the slides. But secrets can be very powerful. Just by the nature of secrets, people really like to have secrets. And if you have something that you feel like they don't know, or you feel like they don't realize is a great shortcut or something, you might think about, how can I recharacterize this? How can I redefine it so that they'll just give me a chance to talk to them? Okay. I think the conspiracies might actually fit in the next one. But certainly conspiracies involve some kind of secret keeping. So, okay. Now we're getting more into the indirect, unaware crowd. We're just trying to get attention. And we're trying to get it in a significant, profound way. A way that has some kind of meaning. So we're not just trying to smack them and say something, sex, now that I've got your attention, etc. We're actually trying to say something that's relevant to them, that means something to them, and you're trying to say it not with volume, but with difference enough that they'll be like, oh my God, there's a whole story here. This kind of thing, this kind of promotion is like, okay, read this or go broke, or End of America, or those other ones. These are more or less, if you look over the history of, for instance, Agora, has been their bread and butter, because you're telling what we call a macro news story, a macro event. You might not mention the product for a very long time in a promotion like this. You were talking about a big, significant situation, idea, breakthrough that they want to hear about. And they'll allow you to do that because it's like they're having a conversation with you about some significant, weighty idea. Yeah. If I know Dan, because I'm not sure I know what that is, but I mean, something I probably read about a long time ago, but from Dan. But yeah, it's a shock and awe kind of thing. It's like you say something that's a little bit outrageous or even a lot outrageous, and then you go on to talk about what's outrageous about it. This is a very nuanced kind of thing to do. It's difficult to do, but if you can do it well, this is how you can get to those people who don't know anything about you, don't know about the product, don't know about the problem they're solving or anything along those lines. But the topic itself is so fascinating that they're engaged. So again, go back to that relationship metaphor, meeting somebody at a cocktail party. How many times have you been standing there thinking to yourself, I don't do chit-chat very well. I am guessing that you could fill a room of 100 people and 99 of them going, I just don't know how to do chit-chat. I mean, you could all probably have a conversation about how crappy chit-chat is. But you're trying to figure that out, and then you start a little conversation with somebody, and then suddenly a topic breaks, and you find yourself talking about something really fascinating. And you're going back and forth, and you're both passionate. That's what this is. You're cracking into that deep territory. Okay. Here's another one. For every illness, there is a country where it simply doesn't exist. This bulletin will tell you why. After you read this bulletin, you probably won't die of cancer, won't die of stroke, won't die from heart attack, won't die of diabetes, or any common condition. Now, that is an audacious thing to say, an audacious claim. And this is a bold idea. This is a very engaging idea, and then the stuff underneath is very bold and audacious. Nowhere in there is there a hint of what is now. Somebody's getting this in the mail, or if we're online, somebody's clicking on this and going to it through their newsletter or wherever they're getting the ad, or Facebook or something. There's a basic understanding between the people who are reading it and the people who wrote it that yes, it probably is going to be trying to sell them something. But up to this point, this is a kind of we're willing to be seduced. And you boldly do this, you feel like I'm going to get something out of this, even though I don't know whether he's selling a newsletter or a health service or vitamins or some kind of book on some kind of technique that I'm going to do or a recipe book. I have no idea what he's going to sell me. But I feel like when I read this, I'm going to learn something really kind of cool and fascinating. And I'm going to be able to use that in my life. So that's what's going on there. End of America, we've kind of talked about this one. Okay, bold, the end of America. That struck people right away, so wake up call. So predictions and declaration leads. These are when you've got an audience out there, new and or jaded, because it's kind of like a loop. Like sometimes you get people who are so overexposed, they're so oversold. They've heard promises left and right. They have problem solution left and right. They need somebody to come out and say something fresh. And somebody says something like a bold statement. I'm like, wait, what did you just say? And they want to hear something about that. That's what's going on there too. Macro news products, anything that's a newsy type of product where the significance of the product is the relationship that somebody has with those people over kind of shared ideologies or something, generally speaking, beliefs about the world. They tend to work very well with these kinds of promotions. Ahead of big events, now would be a good time to write things, if you could, about what's going to happen with the elections in November. Or, you know, we had ones in 1999. We had a huge success with a promotion called The Silence of the Trains. That promotion was about the Y2K bug. And I mean, right now, we think the Y2K bug, some of you have no idea what it is, and those of you who remember it are like, boy, we were so crazy back then. But back then, you know, we had one editor who actually had, he was no longer making payment on some of his debts, and he was like not preparing for a legal battle that he had coming up or whatever, because he said, he's like, what's the point? In a month, that's all going to get wiped from the computers. I'll be free. So yeah, but so a lot of people were out there believing, feeling that way. Anyway, I had big events to a lesser aware audience ahead of uncertain times. You know, uncertain times are times where we feel things lurking. We feel things on the horizon. Presidential re-election and things like that. We feel what's going on. Something that's bold and controversial. Breakthrough products, you know, some huge breakthrough or some huge change or anything like that. So you're really just trying to disrupt with just the idea itself. Okay, last category, stories. Here's one. Detroit steelworker collects $285,420 per year from a global retirement fund. Drawing on massive cash reserves of the world's wealthiest nations, this $18 trillion fund could pay you $115,620 per year for the rest of your life, or enroll today and get your first check by October 27th, 2008. There's actually a lot of things going on there. Impure sample. It's clearly got an offer going on there. I clearly know that something's going to be sold. There are some big promises going on at the top, but it is basically a story-driven promotion about this guy. So what is the benefit of doing things in a story sense? Let me show you a couple more examples, and then we'll talk about, okay. Here's a different one. This is a different tack. This is another one of the Stansberry things, actually. This is, for you guys who know Porter, I pulled a lot of these when the Stansberry group was doing even better than the Agora Financial group, but I like their examples because they really did master a lot of these forms and a lot of, they just really did copy that is really clean and easy to point to. This one is basically saved Porter Stansberry's career. He was working as an editor, and he got fired, and he wanted to find his way back into the fold before he had to go back to Florida and become a lifeguard, which is what he was doing before he became a financial guru. And he wrote this promotion, and he sent it around to me and to Mark Ford and to Bill Bonner and a whole bunch of other people to look through. He must have rewritten it 15, 20 times. This is a good example of a promotion where when you read it, somebody had said this yesterday, when you read the work somebody did over 3 months and you get it in 20 minutes, and you're like, oh my God, I'll never be able to write like this. He did that in this one. He did a really great job. And this new railroad across America that's making some people very rich was the introduction of fiber optic cables. This was back another 1990s promotion. And he did it by talking about the history of the railroads and how that changed the whole American economy by uniting the coasts with the railroad that went across. And the print is too fine even for me to read off of here, but the lead takes the reader and puts them on that train that's going across the great expanse of America, and the wind going by, and what that would have been like. Really nicely done. And the story is that person, the hero of the story is actually the reader who's reading it on the train. So nicely done story there. Outlawed for 41 years, now legal again. We talked about this one where it opens up telling the story about the Rothschilds and how what their life was like, and picturing how opulent it was, and what control they had over Europe and the finances of Europe. And this one, another super classic, this is Bill Bonner. Another one that takes the reader and puts them in a scenario in a storytelling kind of way. So I'll just read this part out loud. You look out your window past your gardener, who's busily pruning the lemon, cherry, and fig trees amidst the splendor of gardenias, hibiscus, and hollyhocks. The sky is clear blue. The sea is a deeper blue, sparkling with sunlight. A gentle breeze comes drifting in from the ocean, clean and refreshing, as your maid brings your breakfast in bed. For a moment, you think you've died and gone to heaven, but this paradise is real and affordable. In fact, it costs only half as much to live this dream lifestyle as it would to stay in your own home. So he packed this whole idea in this scene, a scene that could have said, you can live in paradise for the same price as staying in your own home, which is not bad either. But here, this person is reading this, and they can almost smell the flowers on the breeze and feel what it's like to look out that window and see that crystal blue ocean and sparkling with sunlight. And then one more, and then this is, of course, the super classic. They laughed when I sat down at the piano, but when I started to play. And it goes on and talks about this guy who sits down at a party at the piano, and people all start laughing because they think he must be clowning around, that he can't really play the piano. And lo and behold, even his closest friends had no idea how great he was at playing the piano. I don't know why, but in the 80s, I felt that way about breakdancing. I have no interest in breakdancing at all. I just wanted to be able to one time go, oh, that looks kind of cool, and then do it, and then never do it again. But why stories? Why use stories to do leads? Now, there are lots of people that do story-type leads, so it has to be a really good story. You can't just default at doing a story, do a lead. But the power of stories is the same as the power of secrets, or the same power of like bursting something out, a declaration that surprises people, is that people tend to like stories. It's like, oh my God, I have this really amazing story to tell you. You have no idea what it is, but you might already feel like invested to sit and say, that's an amazing story. I like stories. I'd like to hear it told. We're often willing to sit, and that's what a lead is trying to do. A lead is trying to get you to get that person to be willing to listen to you for just a little bit longer, until you get them to the point that they commit and say, okay, tell me your spiel. So a story can take even those other lead type ideas. It can take a promise, it can take a problem, a solution, and it can wrap it in a narrative, and that narrative has a way of transporting people in a subconscious kind of way, that they don't think about what you're trying to do. They're just willing to hear a story, and then when it's done, they might realize themselves, oh, that was kind of a before and after scenario that sounds interesting to me, or oh, that was a situation where somebody went from rags to riches, or somebody divulged a secret or a shortcut that really sounds pretty cool. Stories can work for all kinds of things, and really you could become somebody who sells stuff nothing by story, and it probably would serve you pretty well. That is a very general way to approach a cold audience. If you can tell the right kind of story, that could work. Okay, so a list there of different things they could use for. So stories might be a confession of something, like, listen, confessions of a failed investor. And they might be something that's the dramatic origin of a product, like how it came about, or a rags to riches guy saying, like, I was in your situation, and here's what I did. When doctors feel sick, this is what they do, kind of thing. You know, tell the story of the doctor, and then. But the dramatization really brings people in to dramatize what's happening. So a lot of what we're doing when we're selling something is dramatizing the results. So if anything, if you want to perfect just one thing about writing persuasive copy, it's a good idea to perfect your ability to sell stories. So tell the stories over and over again until you get really good at it. I have to confess, I have never liked as somebody who thought I was going to be a novelist and who still thinks that maybe one day I will be, I never liked that term about suspending disbelief is usually what people say. And the reason why is actually a little bit not quite an answer to your question, but I think it's valid for storytelling, is that suspension of the disbelief is requesting something of the reader, of the viewer. And it is not the job of the viewer to make your story palatable. It's the job of the writer. So I don't like it because I think you're never asking anybody to suspend their disbelief. You're just bypassing it by being really good at telling your story so it feels believable. Even if they're watching people rebel against the Empire and blow up the Death Star, which we're thinking to ourselves, well, that doesn't happen. But the way the story is told, how it could have happened in a galaxy far away, and we have no idea what happens in galaxies far away, and blah, 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 we become convinced because it's so well told. If they did that and then somebody spilled their Diet Coke in the middle of the scene where they're fighting, taking over the rebel ship, they'd be like, oh, well, that blows the whole story. Does it work because people suspend their belief? I think they do suspend some of their resistance. I guess that maybe that would be a more direct answer. Because people are willing to hear a story, and then you tell the story, and then they'll judge. But it's so much ingrained in the way that we talk to people. It is how we package information and deliver it to another culture, deliver it to kids in a classroom, teaching history. Relating jokes are just stories. When you talk to somebody and you entertain people at a party, the person who's most entertaining is probably the one who's going to be telling some really good stories. So it's just a way to pack information. The product, it's easier to answer your last question first, which is generally not to start. The way that you figure out, so he's asking, how do you decide which one of these 6 lead types you're going to use and when are you going to use it? It starts with that guy on the pillow staring out going, what the hell is going on with my life? Or I can't wait to do something in my life. That's where it starts. That's how you decide. So you have to do the work to figure out who that person is, what they care about, and what they believe in. Now, how do you do that? That's really hard work. That's why it can be really lucrative to be a copywriter. That's why it can be really lucrative to have a business that's going to do better than somebody else because you figure out what that person cares about. So there's no pat answer to that, but you have to just be saturated in what those people believe and feel and want to be, and you start to get that idea and what they're aware of, what they know. So how would I do that research? Somebody asked me in the break how I would do that kind of research. I would try to talk to people who are in my field. I would, since I'm in the financial field, I'd like to meet people at conferences and just talk to them about it, or talk to people in my own life who. I mean, all my promotions that I signed my mother up for all kinds of mailing lists and just flooded her with direct mail. And she would occasionally put we'd go home to visit. She always was more concerned about the financial stuff than my dad, or he just kind of let her do a lot of the stuff. He did stuff with the financial stuff, and then she wanted to do like the extra mile. And I'd come home and the promotions would be either in the room that I usually stayed in when I was there with a note on the top saying, "Did you write this?" ? Which meant she thought, "Oh, this is so nicely written. What a good boy, I'll put it on the fridge." Or "What's this stock?" And that promotion I knew was going to be really good. She was somebody that I would talk to try and find out about their other people. You try and run it by. You read you find out what they're reading, and you read it. or you find out what they want to read that they haven't, and you read it because that person just spent 2-3 years doing research into who those people are. You listen to the shows that they listen to. You watch the movies that are popular, so you get plugged into culture. If there's one way to answer it, it's you have your ear to the ground. But everybody has that experience of when they start trying to figure out how to do something, all of a sudden, everybody's talking about the thing that you were talking about. The truth is, they aren't all of a sudden talking about the thing that you're talking about, but you're listening better. So that's what that is. Okay, I just have a couple more, and then we'll jump into looser stuff. Oops. I wanted to close, I opened with that Gene Schwartz quote. I really like this quote. This is from Gary Bencivenga. This is another one that almost borders on, to me, it's like kind of direct response poetry, if there's such a thing. You guys know that Gary Bencivenga is. He's just probably the most successful direct response copywriter ever. He's also probably one of the nicest people who's ever in the business. He said, "The vast majority of products are sold because of the need for love, the fear of shame, the pride of achievement, the drive for recognition, the yearning to feel important, the urge to look attractive, the lust for power, the longing for romance, the need to feel secure, the terror of facing the unknown, the lifelong hunger for self-esteem, and so on. Emotions are the fire of human motivation, the combustible force that secretly drives most decisions to buy. When your marketing harnesses these forces correctly, you will generate explosive increases in response." So I put that up there because I think what's important to just keep going back to that idea. This whole entire thing, all those lead types, all the things are not magic templates that you pick and apply, whatever, thoughtlessly, because they fit some product model that you have or fit some revenue agenda that you have. This is always about shortcuts to human relationships with a customer. Even in the B2B space, even though the personalities are different, the environment's different, you behave different in a workspace, you are still just communicating one-on-one with another human being. So all these things are designed to do that. So we can end there and then move on to talking about some of the submissions you guys sent in.
Yeah, before we do that, I want to cover very quickly, if I can, a couple things as it relates to thank you, man, to the big idea. Some of you have heard me talk about this before, and others maybe haven't, but hopefully this will clear up some things. We'll also give Jack the opportunity to soothe the throat a little bit. And so the way that I want you to think about it is I want you to think about the big idea, because I know that there continues to be some level of confusion a bit with some folks about what's the difference between the big idea and the headline. Is there a difference between the big idea and the headline? Is there a difference between the unique mechanism that we talk about and the big idea? And what's the difference between the big idea, the headline, and the lead and whatnot? And so I want to try to simplify a couple of these definitions for you. And so the first thing is that, and I would love to, if I say anything that you disagree with, keep it to yourself. All kidding. But is this, so first and foremost, the idea, right? Like I said to you guys and gals yesterday, we're in the idea business. You're presenting an idea, right? There's an idea behind every movie. There's an idea behind every book, just like there's an idea behind every marketing campaign. And the quality of your idea is going to determine the level of attention you get, the level of engagement you create, whether you stand out or not, right? And in order to get attention, in order to create engagement, you need to stand out. You need to separate your message from everything else. And so for me, the idea is the thing that does that, first and foremost. So we were talking earlier, a few of us were talking earlier, Charles, and we were talking about, approaching campaigns from a tactical perspective, like so where does the big idea come into play in the ad, and where does the big idea come into play in the campaign? And I said, take a step back, and first and foremost, where I invest the majority of my energy, effort, and attention always is in the development of the idea. My radar is always up and out. I'm always looking for the seeds of a potential big idea. And the way I think about it, it sounds crude. My wife hates when I use this term, but I'm looking for something that is sexy. I'm looking for something that like the market is going to lust after in terms of an idea. They're going to hear it, they're going to see it, and they're going to stop dead in their tracks, and they're going to say, whoa, I need to hear more about this. Why? Because it's different, because it's new, because it's fresh, because it's something that they haven't been told before, they haven't seen it before, they haven't heard it before. That's the type of idea that you are looking for. And that's the area where if you really, you don't want to settle in that area there, and that's an area where you need to be patient. You need to be patient, meaning you're not going to sit down, right? Like, it's not, when I talk about the big idea and people are like, oh, it's so easy for you, Todd. You sit down and, right, like, and 20 minutes later, you got a big idea. And I'm like, that is the complete antithesis of the way it happens in my life, right? If I sit down with the intention of coming up with a big idea, I can't even come up with ordinary ideas at that point. And so you've got to let it marinate. For me, it's why constantly I have to let things sit. You have to let things sit. You have to turn over the information in your head. You have to mix it around a little bit. You have to let it stir. You have to let it sit, and you can't rush it. The beautiful thing is, and I've said this before, and it's kind of cool that Rich is here, and I would love to put him on the spot. Not manipulate him the way he did me, but put him on the spot and get his insight. But the thing with James Webb Young and that book, A Technique for Producing Ideas, is that what he talks about, which is just so brilliant, is that ideas are really finding connections. Right? Ideas are really all about finding connections between two seemingly disconnected things, right? Things that the ordinary individual wouldn't see. That how is there a connection between these two weird, one thing over here and one thing over here? And it's taking these existing things that are out there and finding those new connections, right? And so if you look at that railroad across America, the beauty, like Jack said, the beauty is that promotion was all about, at the heart of that promotion, it was about the telecommunications industry is about to take off because of, fiber optic cable, voice over IP is now gonna change the whole game. And if you can get in on this voice over IP, fiber optic cable now early, you stand to make a fortune. But what Porter saw was that there was a connection between the spread of fiber optic cable and the change that it was going to make to the telecommunications industry and the opportunity to get wealthy. He saw a connection between that and the way the railroad spread across America and the opportunity back then to get wealthy and the wealth that produced. He saw this connection, whereas the typical marketer, the typical copywriter would be thinking about, a headline or an idea that's like how to get rich off the spread of fiber optic cable, or how to get rich off the coming voice over IP, or how to get rich off of, right? They'd be thinking the ordinary, right? Not looking for this strange connection. And so how to outsource your life. Exactly. Jack just said how to outsource it. That's the common, the ordinary. How to outsource your life. Tim Ferriss is the 4-hour work week. Totally different. Same, right? Same content, same material. The reason why, that's really important. It's really important because I've often said before, there are two people that I really think are brilliant. And I say it because I mean it, not because one of them is my friend. But so the two people that I believe, that I feel are brilliant, one is Jay Abraham, and the other one is, what's the guy's name, Rich? No, is Rich. But here's the truth of the matter is that really it's just because they see connections that others don't. I could sit down with Rich and I could have been working on a problem or working on a campaign idea and like mulling it over, and I'll share it with Rich and he'll think about it for, 15 seconds, 20 seconds or whatever, and he'll see something like, well, isn't that kind of like X? And I'm like, oh gosh, he nailed it. The beautiful thing, right? I believe that there are some folks that are really just natural, brilliant at that, but it's also a muscle that can be developed. And I believe that you can develop that muscle of seeing connections by proactively forcing yourself to develop ideas every day that are based on connections, right? So James Altucher is this guy who recommends the 10 ideas a day or the idea sex, right? And forcing yourself to look for connections. Pick two seemingly disconnected things that you think have nothing to do with each other, that are not connected at all, and see how many connections you could make, right? Like the tire on your car and your monitor, your computer monitor. And force yourself to start to see connections. I'm not even talking about ideas, like I'm not talking about Altucher's idea. I'm just talking about training yourself to look for connections that other people wouldn't see, that if you weren't proactively doing it, you wouldn't see, but force yourself to start to see these connections. And you'll train your mind to begin to spot connections that others didn't see. Go ahead, Teddy. Thinker toys. Okay.
Thinker Toys, Creativity Inc., Imagine by Jonah Lehrer, Where Great Ideas Come From, and Steve Jobs' autobiography all have at the core this idea of idea sex. This idea that there is chaos. You create the chaos of information, and you put it in a contained space. Something is going to link up. I would think a thing that's interesting about that idea of training yourself to do connections. Is there anybody who does improv comedy? Okay, so improv comedy ends up with what? People taking something that somebody else did and finding a connection to it so they can do that and bridge something else. You take a class about writing comedy, which I did take one when I was in New York. Didn't take, as you can tell. But what they tell you to do is go and take a newspaper or something. Take something where you see something every day and you tie it to something else. You just add something to that. You add a layer onto something. You connect it to something. People come to the comedy show, they laugh, and then somebody says, it's funny because it's true. Because they're connecting it to something that's your experience, and they're adding another layer onto it. The connection thing, the connections that happen is we're taking not just two disparate things, which is creativity, but you're taking something that I know and something I don't know, and you're linking them together to build a bridge to understanding how it works. Everything comes down to this. Yes, exactly. I just said this when Rich wasn't in the room, but I am totally stealing his thing about the 4 resets, and then AI is going to be the 5th reset, if I'm counting that right. Because I really think that is a fascinating way to talk about it, because everybody knows, yeah, my life is totally different now from where it was. I love that picture of the phones being held up at the Pope's thing in 2013 and the one in 2005. I love that comparison because we all have just lived through that experience. Our whole life has changed. I don't know. I like that you see that. You connect them.
Plus, bowel health is a really crappy niche.
I am not going to talk about bowel health, but I think that before we talked a lot about differentiation, and that idea of going outside to the edges of what you're doing is dovetails with that perfectly, because in order to differentiate, you have to do something different. So if everybody lives inside the realm of, okay, I'll say it, bowel health, and they're thinking about all that, they have probably explored many of these ideas that are inside that space. If you're going to change the message, you have to pull something in that's outside that space. But you can't go far, far, far afield, how President Trump's tweets are affecting your bowel health or something bizarre. You have to do something that's almost in the field and pull that in. So.
It could be affecting their bowel health. I'm just going to say that, but Jumpstart Your Brain. Awesome. Awesome. So I want to finish. Go ahead. Did you have a question? Uh, Jumpstart Your Brain. Right. Yeah, yeah. Okay. But so, did anybody else have a question before I just finished up?
That was actually inspirational, so I feel guilty telling a story that's totally insignificant after that, but I'm going to anyway. Do you guys know the M&M story? This is all copywriting lore too. No, not the M&M the rapper. M&M's the candy. So melts in your mouth and not in your hands. Sorry? I don't remember the name of the copywriter. That's what I thought you said. So the guy who came up with that, I think, is the same guy who came up with the term unique selling proposition, but I don't remember. However, what happened was he went down to the offices of the guys who make M&Ms, I guess Mars and Mars or whoever it is, and the person was they're somehow British roots. I haven't told this story for so long I don't remember all the details. But the guy went through. He said, well, basically, we got the idea because when we were in the military, went through as we needed some field rations. We needed some kind of quick energy boost that they had in the chocolates, but the chocolates would melt, and then it would get on your hands, and then you would gum up your gun equipment. And they came up with these M&Ms, with these candy-coated shells. Not M&Ms to them. They were just chocolate candy-coated shells. So it's basically war technology. So we went through this long thing and told that history, told about how they made it, told about all the perfections of the candy and the meanings of the different colors and all this other stuff. They had this long meeting about M&Ms, simple, round, tiny little M&Ms, and probably ate a lot of M&Ms. And the guy's like, he said, really, I mean, after all that, he said, really, the thing is that if you have them, they'll melt when they're in your mouth, but they don't melt when you're in their hands. And he said, okay. He took his notes. He went home. And for a week, he did nothing. And then he went back in and he said, I've been working on this for a week, and I came up with a slogan. They melt in your mouth, but not in your hands. And he got paid a fortune for that, and M&Ms have become the top-selling candy in the world based on that slogan. But all he did was spend a lot of, but could he have done that? Could he have walked into that meeting and said, tell me what, in one word, what one sentence, what this is? No, he had to go through that long story about the military history and all the other stuff. You can't skip that part, but it's that thing, pouring lots of stuff, talking to people, walking around, bumping into people. And if you're a virtual worker like I am, and like all the MFA guys are, you need face-to-face time. You need to just be around. I go down to Baltimore sometimes, and I just go find out where Joe is, and I just sit in his office. And just like, why are you here? I'm just here. I just want to be there because something's going to happen. People are going to walk through. They're going to have a conversation. I'm going to go over here. It's going to give me an idea. I'm going to talk about that to them. They're going to have an idea. That's what that is. So you have to be doing that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I think, and then we'll go to Sam. You really, you have to be receptive and open. You've got to recognize, and it was really Gene Schwartz that said this, right, that the ideas don't come from within you. They're out there. You have to find them. You have to dig them out, right? And it's why, when you look at research, I forget who it was who said it, but, you research with a hand truck. Like, it might be the least exciting part of engineering your marketing campaign, this idea of researching and digging, but that's where the best ideas are found. You're not gonna come up with an idea like that just sitting back at your desk and wondering about the candy. The ideas are out there. They are for you to find them. They're for you to look at the things out there, what you hear from the market, what you see in your research, what you stumble across, what gets said in passing, and then looking for connections. And so it's out there. Did you tell the story, because I had to step out a couple times, did you by any chance tell the story, the legend of, and I'm assuming that there's at least some truth to this story, of the Mark Ford and his family coming back from vacation on the plane, and they meet they see a guy drawing, and so this is the story as I heard it. And you know the story. And so basically they're flying home, Mark with his family, and guy next to them is, turns out the guy next to them is one of the creators of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. This is many, many, many moons ago. Obviously, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, huge franchise thing, blew up. And so, of course, Mark, being the curious individual that he is, wants to know, how did you come up with such an amazing idea, an idea that just took the public by storm? And basically, in a nutshell, the guy says, well, so we looked at what's hot out there, what people were attracted to and buying, what's hot, and we knew that it was mutants, right? Ninjas and turtles, and we were going to be marketing to teenagers. And so we came up with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And so, it's paying attention to what is out in the marketplace. And it was Mike Palmer that talked about, looking for what's hot out there, right? Like the way it's funny, I had Amazon send me a little Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle that sits on my desk in my home office as a reminder for me to continually look for what's hot. So I'll look at our marketplace, I'll look at our prospects, and I'll look for what are the topics, what are the ideas, what are the things that are hot, what are the issues on the forefront of their mind, what are the things that they want to hear more about, what are the terms that are trending up, right? And I look for opportunities to combine more than one. But the really important part, which is what Jack talked about earlier with the 3-step process, is what's the story that nobody else is telling? about those, that either the one hot thing or the combination of hot things? What's the story that nobody else is telling? What's the angle that nobody else is telling? So if you see that everybody is talking about cryptos and they're talking about one angle of cryptos or blockchain or something like that, it's what's the story that they're not telling? What's the angle that they're not telling? What's the perspective that's not being shared that you can leverage? So you're taking the thing or the things that are hot in your market's mind, the things that are sexy, the things that are already grabbing their attention, and you're looking for a new way, a different way, a side way in to start to talk about that, to grab their attention. And so with that, I just want to very quickly, what we're going to do is very quickly, I just want to finish up how I see, again, the big idea. I want to go back to how I originally started. Then I'm going to give you guys just a 5-minute coffee break so that we can get some chairs up here, and then we're going to do the hot seats. But so I approach the big idea as, first and foremost, I'm looking for ideas. You know, the really interesting thing, this is one of those things we could have had, because Rich was part of it many years ago. I had a 2-day event just about the big idea, which is crazy. And Joe came in and Rich came in, and so this is one of my favorite topics. But the interesting thing is that what a lot of marketers do is they'll come up with let's say a campaign idea or a campaign, or they have a product, and then they try to find an idea that's a sexy way to market that thing. And that's okay, because we all have existing products and product catalogs and so on and so forth. But the interesting thing, on one of my trips to Baltimore, when I was having lunch with Joe and Addison Wiggin, I asked them about what percentage of your big winners, your big monster campaigns, what percentage are based on product first and then idea versus idea first that spawned the product? Right? So what percent, like the big winners, what the big percentage, is it coming from you've got a product and then from the product you figure out the idea, or is it you figure out the idea, you come up with the idea and then figure out the product? And he said that the big winners are idea first, then product. Idea first. And I believe that that's because when you're not starting with a product, you're not constrained. You get to just look at, when you're willing to be open, right? When you're willing to be open, you could just look around at your market. You could just ask yourself, as a student of your market, as a student of your market's desires, your market's passions, your market's motivators, your market's drivers, what they're acting on, right? You could just look, what are they responding to right now? What are the ideas that are resonating with them? What are the things that are moving with them, right? What are those hot areas? What are the different angles that people are taking, so that I can see what are the angles that people aren't taking when marketing to them? And I get to just look for extremely sexy and hot ideas. And so when I said earlier that Mark said to me, right, that the one thing that changed the whole course for me, that we are in the idea business, I recommend that you live that out in terms of how you seek out and develop these ideas. A great idea will carry a weak marketing message. In other words, a great idea does the heavy lifting. A great idea. You know what? And I'm going to go on a tangent. I don't mean to commandeer the mic and do your thing, right? Is this, right? And I want you to get this. I want you to understand this, right? And that is this, that, the thing to understand, what I find, because now, with acquire and monetize, when people are on the calls and submitting leads and submitting headlines and submitting marketing arguments, and we're looking at them and I'm giving my feedback on them, and I find that there's a lot of very hyperbolic, exaggerated copy. There's a lot of hyped up, there's a lot of puffery out there in the copy. Number one, I feel like a lot of people have been led to believe that that's good copy, right? That the steroid-like, explosive, growth hormone triggering, muscle building, ferocious freak show-like supplement, like that's good copy, right? That adjective-laden copy is the way to go. And the reality is that it's the complete antithesis of good copy. Good copy doesn't read like copy. Good copy doesn't feel like copy. Good copy you don't sense that you're being sold and manipulated. It does not read that way. But here's the real thing, right? This is what I want you guys to understand. That I feel that it largely stems from people starting with a weak idea. When you got a weak, run-of-the-mill, average idea, and what I would say, to be really crude, is, right, you're starting with a pig, and now you're trying to put lipstick on that pig and make it look all nice, right, with your flowery language. You got an ordinary, right, like maybe you got a product even that's just subpar, that's okay. You got an ordinary idea. In order to make it sound grand and great, you got to use grand language and great adjectives. And you're trying to prop it up. You're trying to prop up a weak idea, right, with powerful language. But the reality is this, that you don't need that powerful language or puffed up language when you've got a powerful idea. When you've got a great idea, the idea itself does the heavy lifting. And so you need to invest time, energy, and effort in whatever is necessary in terms of that time, energy, and effort to develop those ideas. And it reminds me in a lot of ways of, of hiring. And I think that we used to talk about it years ago, Rich and I, like hiring and recruiting. You know, the worst time to start to hire people is like when you just had to terminate somebody, right? Or somebody just resigned, right? Because like now you're under the gun and your decision-making process is going to be skewed a little bit. You should be recruiting and hiring all year round. You should be looking for all-stars all year round. You should be striving to improve your team, right, David, all year long. It never ends, right? I'm always looking for all-stars. I would always love to bring another all-star aboard. I share that with you in this context because you should always be looking for big ideas. You should always be on the hunt for ideas. You should always be open to ideas. And you've got to recognize that that's where the game begins. When you start with a big idea, everything else is infinitely easier. It's why oftentimes you start with a big idea, you start with a powerful idea. The beauty is just share it. Share it. You don't worry about colorful language. Don't worry about all this stuff. The idea will do the heavy lifting. And so, first and foremost, did you want to add anything? No? Okay. He was looking at me like he was staring me down. I don't want to glance over there. So for me, I look at the idea. The idea does one thing. This is the idea, the role of the idea is this: to cut through the noise. To cut through the noise in a saturated marketplace. I said earlier that the idea itself is the pattern interrupt. The idea itself, right? An idea that is new, unique, different, fresh, timely, right? That is a pattern interrupt. When it's something that they haven't heard before or seen before, that is a pattern interrupt. And so the idea is there to get attention. Now, the difference between the idea and the headline is the words that you use to convey the idea, right? There's a lot of different ways to convey the same idea, a lot of different words. I might choose one verb, you might choose another verb. The headline is how you express the idea, right? In the most succinct, simple, clear manner. And when it comes to copy, like, look, it's, and I believe that it was Mark that really drilled this into me, it's clarity over creativity. When in doubt, I've had clients that are, students in A&M or even Top One that I'll read off a paragraph that they have in their copy. And I'll say, like, wow, it's a lot going on there. What were you trying to say in that paragraph? And they'll say, well, I was really just trying to say that these type of mushrooms are the healthiest mushrooms for you to consume. And so I say, well, why didn't you just say that? Why didn't you just say that? Say that, not this, that. The simple thing, right? And so clarity trumps creativity. It's all about being crystal clear. And when you have a big idea, let it shine through because it's going to do the heavy lifting. For me, the idea, right, I see it as it's what gets attention, right? Now, the lead the lead, and I'm gonna simplify this. So I'm gonna simplify. Not I'm gonna boil down, regardless of which lead type you choose. In my mind, the idea is what gets the attention. It's what stops the prospect and gets them to say, okay, let me hear more about it. Like, whoa, this is new. This is a little different. Let me go a little further and let me see what this is about. And then the lead, right, the first 300, 400, 500, 600 words is all about getting them emotionally sold. What do we mean when we say emotionally sold? To me, it's leading somebody to the point where emotionally they're like, dang, that's what I love that. Like, I want that. That sounds good to me, right? Like, that is like, you've got me. I'm interested. I want to, like, if it's what you're saying, I'm in. Count me in, right? Like, if it's what you're saying, tell me, how do I get it? Tell me the price. Like, give me some details on getting this. Because emotionally, it's exciting. Emotionally, it is compelling. That's all I'm trying to do. And so for me, typically in the lead, I'm unpacking what it is that I said in the headline a little bit. So I'm expanding a little bit on the benefits. I'm adding in maybe some more layers to the benefits. Maybe I'm dimensionalizing it a little bit more. I might be teasing the unique mechanism in there. Like, here's why you're gonna experience this, and just getting them to say, dang, that sounds good. Like, if that's what it is, I want it. And then once I've got them there, once I've got them saying, wow, that's what I want, right? Then I go into what I call the marketing argument. This is where sometimes Rich and I have some debates with certain things. The marketing argument for me is to do one thing. One thing. The rest, the bulk, the body of the marketing argument is to do one thing. And that is to provide the logical support for that emotional desire. Meaning, in other words, I'm going to prove to them now that the thing that I just got them excited about, the thing that they said to themselves, like, if this is true, this is it. If this is true, if this thing really works, if this thing can really get me crypto, like profits on autopilot night and day, 24/7, I'm in. Now you read on. You read on why? Because you read on to say, well, let me see, show me. Yeah, this sounds great, but let me see. Convince me that what you're saying is true. Convince me. So you have to show them how it works, why it works. You don't have to give away everything, but you want to fill in those gaps in their mind. You want to complete that argument for them, right? And so for me, that becomes a mix of the logical points, the rationale. Like, I'm teaching, I'm explaining why it works and how it works. And I'm providing the proof and the evidence so that they can say at the end, okay, now I know why it works. Now I know why he or she can promise me X. Now I get it. Now I want it. Now tell me what the deal is. Now tell me the dollars and cents. Now I believe it. I see why it works. I understand why it works. Now I want it. At which point, we present them with a superior, irresistible, no-brainer offer. Now we just want to make it a no-brainer for them to go ahead, right? We want to make it seem like I wanted it. I wanted it. I got all the proof and evidence necessary to see that it's legit and it works. And here is an offer for me to do it that's a total no-brainer. Done deal. Done deal. And so the idea, the way I look at it, the analogy or metaphor, the idea is the bait in the water, right? Like I learned, like, I'm on there's water in my backyard, right? Very common in South Florida. And so when I first moved from Jersey to South Florida, I would take my little girls out back and we'd throw, like, let's fish a little bit, and I'm not an outdoorsman by any stretch of the imagination. And so I'm out there, and we have some big bass in this water, man. And so, I would feel something on the line, and my girls were, they were this big at the time. Now they're like just this big. It's the genes. And so I feel something on the lure, whatever. I'd ask my neighbor to use these lures or whatever, and I'm out there and I'm doing my thing, and I feel something, and so I start reeling I would start reeling this thing in, and my kids are jumping up and down as I'm about to pull out a whale, and I'm feeling like a hero, like I'm a stud, and then yeah, daddy's all And then all of a sudden it's, I'm like, what's the deal? And I reel in and I pull the thing up and there's just a little lure on the end, right? And I'm like, I don't get it. All right, maybe whatever. I get, And so we would keep fit. We would go out and, and I'd be, next time, I'd go out and same thing and fish. And the kids would jump, no, yeah, oh, this is it. And it would come off, right? And then I learned and I'd say to my neighbor, like, I don't know what the, I don't know this, what am I doing wrong, man? And my neighbor's like, all right, so you feel something on the lure. He's like, are you setting the hook? I'm like, what do you mean? Before you reel it in, man, set the hook. Like, set it so that, because if you don't and you start pulling in, the fish is going to just let go. The fish is going to let go, and that's what I was experiencing. I would get excited and just start reeling, like, oh, man, this is it. And so then the next time we went out there, I felt that thing, and I was like ready to start reeling in, ready to go back to my old, and I was like, and then I pulled that thing out, and it was the greatest day of my life at that point. Like, I'm standing out there as if I'm ready to conquer the wilderness.
See if that were me, I'd be the
I would have faked like it was moving and then threw it back in real quick. But it's a bootfish, girls. It's a bootfish. But I share that with you, all kidding aside, I share that with you because that to me is what the lead does. See, the idea is the bait in the water. The idea is what gets the attention of the prospect. It's what gets the attention of the fish, so that the fish sees, oh, something over there. Let me see. Let me bite. Let me take that thing in my mouth to see what it's all about, right? And then the job of the lead is to set that hook, so they don't swim off, right? And then I provide the support. I reel them in with the marketing argument, right? And the way I look at it is, as I'm reeling that, after I set that hook, as I'm reeling that fish in, they're getting closer and closer and closer and closer and closer, right, to the land that I'm standing on, to my backyard. And so that's the equivalent. When I'm reeling in is me delivering the argument, is me delivering the beliefs, is me shaping their perspective. Now here's the one last thing that I wanna say, and then if you wanna, or Rich, and then I'll keep going for the rest of the day, and then I'll give you guys a break, and we'll do the hot seats. Is this: have you ever looked at who's looked at the stats, the analytics for a VSL? Like who's pulled up the drop-off point? So, right, like we use Wistia, right? And in Wistia, you've got a graph of, where's the drop-off, right? And we love to look at the drop-off. Can we see where, like where's the drop-off? And so that we're gonna do something. We're going to go back in and we're going to tweak it, right? And 99 out of 100 times for a client who comes to me and they show me the graph, I say, I don't even need to see your graph, and let me predict where the big drop-off point is. It's within the first 90 seconds. Am I right? And they're always like, yeah. How'd you know? And here's the reality, and this is all kidding aside. This is the takeaway. The takeaway is this: that oftentimes you're gonna see the big drop off up front, no matter what you do. But more often than not, you see this precipitous drop off immediately, right? Within the first 30 seconds, 35 seconds, and then it evens out. It's because of this. It's because they just started reeling in. They didn't set the hook. They just started reeling in. And what I mean by that is that they got the attention of the prospect. Right? And then the lead didn't set the emotional hook. The lead didn't do the job of setting the hook. The prospect said, let me see what this is about. And then they got there and they pressed play. And they say, not what I thought. Doesn't get me excited. Doesn't get me juiced up. You see, the lead has to set that hook. It's not the time or the place to get into the marketing argument. It's not the time or the place. Like like I think Mark, who always said, you got to sell to the heart first, then the head. Convince the heart, then the head. You got to get that emotional buy-in first. You got to get them jacked first. And then, heart-wise, and then you could show them how. You start reeling in too early, they're going to swim off. And so you've got to have that emotional sale first. Anything?
Well, yeah, actually, this is a good.
Let's start over.
Yes. In the beginning, there was a puddle with 2 tiny amoeba, and no, it's so funny that you are so close to Mark because you're like his spirit brother or spirit animal or something. You're so much like him. Yeah, because minus minus the money. Minus the money. Now, Mark, there have been so many presentations that I've done with Mark. There was one that I did in front of like 300 people in London, and I was up, and it was like a thing. We had a technical difficulty, and so it was hard to get it started. So I had to like re-warm up the audience and everything. And about 10 minutes in, Mark said, "Look, that's a good point there, John. Can I throw a little bit of something extra onto that?" And 25 minutes later, I got the microphone back. I should just bring chips and eat the chips. No, but he always said something wise, and all of that was very wise, and the break point there is useful. I think one of the biggest things that I saw this year that was eye-opening for me was that on one of those copywriting calls, they showed the Hotjar videos. Were you on that call? So they had this thing where they track when as soon as I get the microphone, my voice quits. Yeah. So they have this thing. Yeah, I don't want that on film, me whispering in your ear. They have this thing where they can track they can actually visualize as the person scrolls through the promotion. We can see what device they're looking on, and see where where the cursor goes while they're moving through, or where their finger touches. So a lot of these people, they come in, a VSL starts, they let it play for a little bit, then they scroll around a little bit, then they click out of it, and then they go, and you can see them move up, and they read the lead, they move it up a little, they read a little bit more of the lead, move it up a little. Some of them close the page, no hook, no setting of the hook. Some of them go, they skim down and they fly. And if it's on an iPhone, which now like 60 or 70%, some crazy percentage is now on mobile, they don't just fly, they zoom past, blinding. You can't even tell it's letters that are going past. And then they might see a chart or something, and they'll stop, and they'll go and they'll read a little bit, or a subhead, and they'll read. And then they fly again, they go right to the offer, they go slowly through the offer, and they either click order or they don't. And it's depressing when you think you just spent a month writing that promotion, laboring over. You spent 2 hours trying to find out which year it was that FDR outlawed gold and why. And they flew past that little bullet point because you figure they don't care. You have no idea where they're going to stop in that middle. So you have to write all of it like they're going to read all of it, and you have to convince yourself that they love it just as much as you do and dream about it and everything. But what they really do is they read that lead, and if the emotional hook gets set in that lead, some of them are going to zoom right past and go to the offer page and place an order. You can't just leave a big blank space, lorem ipsum, whatever, dollar, something in the middle. You have to write stuff there, but that's that lead and that offer. So that's all I want to add.